Weekly on Weird Products, we cover failed attempts at trying to turn a car's character into something they're not, whether it be a backpack, a lunchbox, or a pillow that you could also use as a pet. But we've never really delved into the world of playsets, set pieces that are supposed to be in scale with the coinciding Cars merchandise line. And while they are definitely not as cursed as some of the Cars character products we've featured before, some of them are very weird. Hello everybody and welcome back to yet another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at weird Disney Cars playsets. You've probably noticed by now that Ty isn't here today and instead I'm hosting this episode. And if you don't know who I am, hi, I'm Rashid Reviews. I'm a Cars YouTuber. I've done some cameos for Ty's channel before, but today I'm hosting an entire episode of Weird Products. Why? Well, that's because this is a part of Ty's guest host week. Basically, this week Ty is going to upload videos that other Cars creators have made specifically for his channel, and I chose to do a Weird Products episode on Cars Playsets. An idea that I actually suggested to Ty before this whole guest host week thing. But I figured, fine, I'll do it myself. So without further ado, let's get started with our first weird product. Now I wanted to start with something more familiar for this episode. So we're going to take a look at a few Mac playsets that Ty didn't include last episode or just glossed over the first time around. Speaking of which, Super Track Mac. First thing you've probably noticed is that this Mac is absolutely ginormous.
This thing's enormous!
Look at it compared to a 155 scale diecast. This thing is huge. And you might be wondering, why is it so huge? Well, aside from having lights and sounds, this Mac, more specifically its hauler, transforms into a full-scale racetrack for 155 scale diecasts. I repeat, it transforms into a full-blown racetrack for Disney Cars diecasts to race on. And it's not a cheap playset either. It has a booster to make the cars zip around the track. It has 2 spots for fans to watch the race. It has a winner's circle, a pit row, and a full-on jumbotron. This thing is insane. I can't believe this is even a Mac product. Now, the booster has a weird outer shell thing that only works with regular-sized cars like McQueen and Cruise and all those, so unfortunately, no, you can't race Mac inside of his own hauler. Next up is another Mac, this time from the Wheel Action Drivers line. Honestly, the Wheel Action Drivers line as a whole was very strange. They were basically plastic cars, but when you push down on the back wheels, the front wheels pop out, and they do some other unnerving action depending on the car. They also made a Mac for this line, which was equally as weird. Aside from having a very uncomfortable expression, this Mac folds out like your typical transforming Mac playset. But first of all, it all folds out onto one side of the hauler instead of having 2 pieces on each side. And second of all, the things included are very strange. It's structured almost as a tour of Mac's hauler, having you go on a linear track and only being able to go one way, unlike the normal Mac playsets, which are supposed to be a home for McQueen that you could cruise at your leisure. So just like how this playset is supposed to be a tour of McQueen's home, let me take you on a tour through this playset to see the weird oddities that lie within. First, you drive onto the buffing station with Harv on the phone in a very unfortunate screenshot of Mac from Cars 1. You move on to the trophy wall, which is not painted, a car lift, a quote-unquote pop-up TV. Man, I didn't even know those things existed. I gotta get myself a pop-up TV now. A recharging station, which is a very poor choice of words as it makes it sound like one of those Tesla superchargers. A paint gun and Mac's hauler. Why would McQueen want to get a new paint job inside of Mac's hauler of all places? Oh, but that's not it. Looks like Mac stole a few gas pumps from Flo's and attached them to his hauler for whatever reason. Oh, and the launcher at the end, of course. Oh, and did I mention you could also move Mac's grill upwards to open his mouth like a puppet? Yeah, I think I've had enough of this playset and its horrors. Let's just move on to the next playset. Our final Mac playset for the day is the Mac Track Challenge. Unlike the Super Track Mac, which had a racetrack inside of Mac, this playset has a Mac inside of a racetrack. Man, Eminem's got nothing on me. It seems like your typical car's racetrack until you switch the diverter to the inner track, in which you see Mac awaiting you with a ramp going through his hauler, which you jump off of, land, and win the race. But you know what makes this even weirder? In Cars Race-O-Rama, there is an early mission in the game called the Mac Track Challenge. Your objective is to race around the track 4 times, and on the 4th time, you get diverted onto an inner track with Mac awaiting you with a ramp going through his hauler, which you jump off of, do some quick time events, and win the race. And considering this playset was released in the 2009 Race-O-Rama packaging, it's safe to say this is a form of cross-promotion between the game and the diecast line, meaning this is technically the only piece of Cars video game merch out there. Great. Simply amazing. No, I'm being serious here. This is great. This is awesome. I love this. Let's move on from the Mac playsets and take a look at a couple of sets from the Story Sets line. This was a very dark age of the Cars diecast line, where they tried to be cool and hip and have epic jumps and stunts and cool stuff, and it clearly shows in our first playset here, the Drop and Jump Gray playset. Instead of having a regular gray that transforms into a nice and neat home for the king, this just straight up transforms into a ramp, and even has a piece in the shape of the Dynaco logo that you could attach to poor Gray here, and you try to knock out the dinosaur part of the logo. This is just very gimmicky. And the sad part is, this is the only Gray playset out there. So that means that poor Gray, he got one shot of becoming a playset. He could have been a nice transforming home that the king would live in. You know, maybe it would be similar to the Mac, but have a few different things here and there, you know, showcase the different lifestyles between McQueen and the king. But no. Instead, they turned my poor guy into a ramp. So, that playset was very gimmicky, am I right? Well, the same goes for this here Ultimate Piston Cup Speedway. And despite what the name suggests, this is nowhere near the Ultimate Piston Cup Speedway. This playset is almost like a game of sorts. You launch your car around this figure-8 speedway, and every lap, a plastic Guido at the far end of the track will rotate just a little bit. The objective is to have Guido face forwards, and then you switch the diverter, drive onto a little platform that the Guido is on, and this huge piston cup emerges from underneath the track to tell you that you won the race. Is this a very over-the-top way to congratulate you? Yes. Does it inconvenience literally everyone else on the track? Yes. But hey, a win is a win, am I right? Okay, now let's move on from the story sets and talk about the mini adventure set, Race and Rescue Station. From what I'm getting at, this is basically the courthouse that can transform into a kind of an obstacle course for Red to tackle. But it just wouldn't be a Cars playset without having you go through an epic loop-de-loop. Mattel seems to have some sort of obsession with putting loop-de-loops everywhere they can in a Cars product. Like, I get it, they make Hot Wheels, loop-de-loops are kind of their whole thing, you know, but still I find it so obnoxious that Mattel tries to put loop-de-loops in places that don't fit at all. It's just so jarring seeing an epic loop-de-loop inside of a fire station. A fire station of all places. Next up is the 2021 Radiator Springs Mountain Race playset. a more recent playset that is a weird combination of those spiral speedway playsets that were for little toddlers and the Radiator Springs Mountain Challenge. This is a race playset with Radiator Springs elements thrown in there, something we've seen countless times before. But would you believe me if I said that not only is this a weird playset, it is also a very cheaply made one. This item somehow manages to fundamentally fail as a playset. The diverters mess up the cars most of the time. Most diecast cars go down very slowly, so it's not really much of a race. And there are several points in the playset where cars can easily get stuck and derail the entire race. Mattel clearly prioritized looks over functionality in this playset. And that is very unfortunate because this is a very nice looking playset and it's a shame it doesn't work properly. But hey, just like Ty said in Weird Disney Cars Puzzles, this series isn't called Cheap Products, this is Weird Products. Let's get back to the weird stuff. No, go back to the cheap stuff. Please, go back to the cheap stuff. Around Cars 2's release, a line called the Cars Wood Collection was created. As the name suggests, this was a collection of wooden Cars characters, along with wooden track sets not too dissimilar from wooden train toy lines, like Thomas Wooden Railway or Brio. However, unlike those two other lines, this line gives me nightmares. This is the Tow Mater's Yard set. It is a pretty faithful adaptation of Mater's Junkyard, except for one thing. There's a crane now, and it has a face. And it has buck teeth just like Mater's, so I'd have to assume that he's a relative of Mater's. I don't know, maybe he's Mater's uncle Jommy Toe or something. Imagine a world where you could be born as a speedy race car. You could be born as a giant airplane. You could be born as a Roomba. And I know that doesn't sound exciting, but at least you'd have wheels and you'd be able to roam around freely. But no, you're an immobile crane that's destined to move objects from one place to another. And if that's not bad enough, you have to live with this guy. And yet he still manages to keep a smile on his face. Look, we're here for you, okay, buddy? Hashtag justice for Jommy Toe. Get that trending on Twitter. I saved what might be the coolest yet weirdest product in this episode. The Cars 2 Big Loader set from Tomica. This set has a very similar concept to your typical Big Loader set. A motor on wheels has a pre-written script that it'll perform on pieces of track, and it'll switch between multiple shells, acting like multiple vehicles going back and forth, picking up and dropping cargo. Now, there isn't a clear start or end to these cycles, so I'm gonna start right when the motor switches to Mac. Mac starts driving backwards to pick up Lightning McQueen. He picks him up, then goes through the Y to flip himself backwards, then drives forward again past the Y, then going back to the Y to drop off Lightning McQueen. And Lightning starts speeding around the track. Mac returns to the starting area where the motor switches to Mater. Mater goes through a tunnel, flips himself backwards, and pushes McQueen onto the pickup point. Mater goes back to the start area where the motor switches to Mac and the cycle repeats. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely weird things about the set, like McQueen being treated like the cargo, Mater being way too small for the motor, and just Mater's face. That face. But the set is admittedly kinda cool. I can see people watching this playset in awe of the engineering that went into it. But it is admittedly a little bit cursed. Especially that Mater. Please get me as far away as possible from that thing. And that is it for today's episode of Weird Products. Thank you to Ty for giving me this opportunity to talk about weird playsets for toys based off of a franchise about talking cars. On a more serious note here, it has been fun making this. We really don't delve into non-character specific merch that much here on Weird Products, So it was fun delving into the weird world of Disney Cars Playsets. And I hope you enjoyed it too. Or maybe you've been scarred for life by the big loader mater. If so, I'm very sorry for you. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching. This has been Weird Products Playset Edition, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye now. I've always wanted to do that.